I'm Knoxy. Whatever broke, it wasn't my fault. This is Red's Detail Company.
How many detailers do you know that have had their own reality TV show on the History Channel?
At that time, like, no one had ever seen anything like this.
What's up, guys? It's Knoxy.
Meet Eron Knox, aka Knoxy, who thinks outside the box and is pretty much always innovating.
It's a new formation of lighting, stainless steel tripod.
On this episode of Nick at Night, we talk about the original sanding blocks he helped invent through KXK Dynamics.
It scared the shit out of the industry. Where you put this tiny little 2-inch block in their hand and you give them a little 3000 grit and they rub it over the scratch and they're like, oh no. And then they polish it and all of a sudden they've got magic.
You just have to wipe it off.
But what if the magic wasn't over yet? Knoxy is at it again, talking the new SIC sanding discs he developed through CarPro.
How do you put a product out on the market that is anywhere near the two global juggernauts?
At the end of the day, Knoxy is still a working detailer, by the way.
We charge $225 here for a car wash.
So you know you want to hear more about how he runs his business and how he polishes paint. Stay tuned. While you're at it, press subscribe.
If everything from the manufacturer's OEM is always changing, then that means that no one knows everything. And they never will. I've trained hundreds and hundreds of detailers. And whenever I propose this one, they're like, oh.
These sanding discs look wild.
They are wild.
Should we start there?
If you want, we can also talk about the lights, whatever
Let's
you
talk
want.
about the lights. Let's talk about we are in Knoxy's shop, so I want you to drive, Knoxy.
Driving, careful. So we were talking, for everybody listening or viewing, we were talking about the lights that I just made, aka the 747 lights, but it's a new formation of lighting, stainless steel tripod on casters so you can roll it. It's got a height. This is actually as low as it gets. It'll go all the way up to like 9.5 feet, so you can cast light down. And then you turn your ambient light off, and between the mixture of temperature in these bulbs and the pitch and degree, I now have the ability to see every single defect in that finish, including micro marring and haze. So if it goes from, I don't know if you can see the swirls in that.
Oh, I can.
And then it goes into that. So now you can see your swirls, your deeper scratches, and your micro marring and haze. And if you can finish down under that light and that particular lighting, you pretty much just increase the quality of work that you do by at least 35-40%.
So for everybody in the comments now, where do they find this light? How do they like, what do you even do to make something like that?
I use my noodle, dude. I literally built all of that stuff from like makeshift items and parts that I needed to fulfill a purpose. And a lot of it, I mean, I got like on President's Day Amazon deals. Like that tripod stainless steel should have been like $260, but I got 2 of them for $70.
Excellent.
Yeah, so, and then like the light bulbs are just a very specific light bulb that I look for, and they sell those at like Home Depot.
Any idea, can you share what kind of light bulb they are? What do you like
It's
for
a
paint
par,
connection?
it's a par 38 floodlight, but it comes with a diffused pitch. So like, it's not one of those deals where like, if you heard this or watched this, like you could just run up into Home Depot and go grab one like a Philips light changer. You know what I mean? It's not the same. So you have to look for specific things like the diffusing agent on this light. That's the reason why it's not like a clean lens. It's diffused. So what it does is it projects a different type of lighting on the panel and allows you to see the area in a different light, if you will. But then you add a higher temperature burning light in conjunction with it, and you have to find just the right balance. That's why there's only 2. Usually my setup has like 4, so it'll be like 4,000 lumens And you turn all the ambient light off, and it will essentially open up that panel to where you can literally see everything in that finish. You can see, like, if the finish is thin, like you're about to get yourself into a danger zone, you can actually see that with the lighting instead of just guessing. So, like, scan grips,
Wow.
yeah, scan grips and all of those other lights are, I mean, they're great. I've got the Lake Country point light, when I'm training people just to kind of get them to see stuff. They're all good. They work, but like, if you really want like award-winning finishes, and that's kind of why we build the tools and stuff that we need in order to be able to do this correction and stuff.
So award-winning
Me
finishes,
and your homeboy
award-winning.
Shine Doctor.
What's that?
Me and your homeboy Shine Doctor.
We should get Shine Doctor on the podcast.
I don't know
America's
what he's doing
favorite
right
positivity hype man. He's
There's
a
the lobby
positive
right there.
fellow. What's that?
So there's the lobby right there.
So this is Red's Detail Co. Seen on reality television, seen on your Facebook, your YouTube. Like, I've been following you for so long, and getting you on this podcast is years in the making.
Yeah, dude, and I'm sorry for that, man.
No,
it's
all
just been
good.
chaos.
Because you're out here doing stuff. You're actually in these streets, detailing cars and making money. So I guess
products and you name it. It's
what are you
the whole
excited
thing.
about right now?
What am I? I'm excited about one, that I'm still breathing, and I can wiggle all of these when I woke up, so that's pretty cool. Got this facility that I built with my own two hands. People that appreciate the stuff that I do, so I feel like I have purpose. People in my life that love me. That's what makes me happy. Money, my hot rod out there.
Wait, is that what you're working on? That Corvette?
Nah, that ain't mine, bro. And I mean, I would probably own something like that, but I don't. That's not my flavor. That's not my style. Like, this is.
I feel like I've seen your hot rod before. But
That's
yeah,
mine.
that's wild. Is this all done?
Yeah, it's actually painted to look like that. That's a cammed 455 out of a 70s Oldsmobile 442. Those are jet boat headers off of a legit jet boat. That's a 1930s body off of a Ford Briggs custom mandrel exhausts with an inlaid baffle so I don't go deaf.
Okay.
It's all custom machine.
I meant to ask you about that. So, I mean, it's a gorgeous. I mean, do you submit that to shows? Have you do you just have it for you? Like, what's the?
Yeah, dude. I mean, I do it. I designed it and had it built for therapy. This car doesn't have power steering. It doesn't have power brakes. It doesn't have air conditioning, heat, and all that other jazz. It's literally just you in this car, and it's collective curb weights like under 1,800 pounds, and it's got over 550 horsepower. So, like, if I want to, I can dust a Lamborghini. But it's old, it's rowdy, it stinks. When I roll down the road, women cover their children's eyes. Like, everything that is still something that'll make your heart beat.
Is it street legal?
Oh, yeah, 100%. It's got mirrors. I even got little turn signals. I got it. It's sitting on 22s.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, full 4-point air ride system, so like you don't get your teeth rattled out of your face if you hit a bump. That's right.
So I first got to know you on the Facebook forum of American Detailer Garage when the Bizzle Shizel mix, which was ADG, their all-purpose cleaner, whatever the hell it's called, F-bomb mixed with Wipeout, Billy's rinseless, was like this magic mix of cleaning and protectant.
Yeah.
And that was not
really
when you
good.
started detailing, but that's when I started detailing.
Oh, okay. I remember that. And I've got a funny story about that product or those two products. But yeah, that was a while back, man. And I actually remember those good times. Knoxy's Bizzle Shizel. I figured out like F-bomb was one of those things that was like so heavily concentrated and you could tell that it had like acidic value. And Wipeout had polymers in it. So I knew that you could dilute it with water and then the polymers kind of diffuse the acidic values of it. gave it that shine after, right?
Yeah.
And it was just like at that time we were doing this dealership, and this guy like went on a whim. It was like not like a real big brand dealership. It was like one of those, privately owned deals. And he was doing really well for himself, but like it was weird because he would go into these waves. Like he would go buy like 15 Kias, and then he would sell them, and then it would be like whatever was at the auction basically. So like a slew of, Mercedes came through. He would buy a bunch of Mercedes. So like at that time when I created Bizzle, it was a slew of fleet vehicles, like fleet trucks.
Okay.
So I was like, oh, I mean, they're all stark white, but they're like covered in carbon and soot and gross, fleet vehicle, typical wear and tear. So like I wanted something that would cut that out real quick. You could hook it up with a pressure washer or a steamer, and it would just like bring back that super clean, like brand new white look. And that's like literally why I put those two products together, because I needed a solution for that.
Wait, so you were using those on the outside and the inside?
Yeah.
I thought that was just interior cleaning mix.
Nah, that was exterior too, dude. It would take
that was everything.
It would take artillery fungus off, like if it wasn't too like petrified. It would clean engine bays like a boss, clean wheel wells like a boss. Yeah.
And I was cleaning Tesla interiors, and you're out there like doing fleet vehicles, but it worked. It worked.
It was pretty legit. It was
pretty stout. I want to know, okay, so you're excited about things other than detailing. Can we talk about these new SIC sanding discs?
110% we can.
I don't know where to go with this conversation. My mind says like go 17 different directions, but the hot new topic are these sanding discs. So I want to like hear your pitch on them.
They're rad. So like it was real, like there was like 2 challenges in a row. We had just buttoned up Wheel X, and that was a project in itself. That took a very, very, very long time to balance. And we had just dialed it in. It hit all the resellers around the world, and it was like an instant success. It was funky. It smells. The first formulation, I'm pretty sure they turned it into like a banana scent or something, but it was super robust. But that was like a super relief. And while we were doing that, we staggered projects, and CarPro was like, we want to explore more things than just ceramic coatings. If you're familiar with CarPro, they've been around for well over 15 years.
CarPro also available on the House of Rags, the sponsor of this podcast. So hey,
beep pop boot, yeah,
they can buy the product on House of Rags. And by the way, please subscribe to the channel if you're enjoying this content. All right, Knoxy, continue on. So
subscribe to the main channel.
And Red's Detail Go.
That's right. Yeah, we're actually on YouTube. I'm getting back into it, dude. We're weak. We have like 2,300 subscribers.
But your recent video just had 22,000 views, which is big. That's big.
That's why.
It's on these sanding discs. That's why I'm asking about them.
Well, there was one we had like an anomaly. It was like an old GTO, 69 GTO that like takes my breath away when I start talking about it. That's like one of my bucket list cars. That hit like 90,000 views out of nowhere. And I was like, what?
Are you editing these too?
Yeah.
So solo operation. Okay, cool.
Yeah. Where were we? Oh yeah, CarPro. Like, so they've been around for well over 15 years, and they built a lot of the fundamental foundations that started the whole ceramic coating trend. So like a lot of the structure design inside of a ceramic coating and how it works. And this is before they were using, the fluorines and all that other stuff, like just straight up silica dioxide structuring in the very, very, very early days. CarPro were like the pioneers of building the structure. C-Quartz UK is still to this day one of the most banging coatings you can get pound for pound, consumer grade. And there's a reason for it, So after however many I've lost track now how many coatings we've created and designed and put together and formulated. like the owner of Carpro Global is like, I just want something different. I want something new. You know, he's always on this like innovative thing. He's constantly almost to his own detriment at times. You know, it's like, we're like, leave it alone, you know, stop messing with it. Like he's one of those guys. And I mean, that's a key attribute to a successful company in some ways. You know, it can be, like I said, a detriment in others, but he wanted to just like something different, you know? And I'm like, well, you make a ton of ceramic coatings and you make, you know, PPF and you have all of this other good like cleaners and brushes and stuff like that. I was like, but we don't have anything for like my type of people.
Who's your type of people?
It's like people that are using compounds regularly, they're wet sanding, they're using the rotaries. It's like this hybrid mix of like, you know, boutique-y, super nice detailing, body shop stuff, daily driven trashed vehicles, you know, dealership stuff. Like I have a very large spectrum, and the way that we work here, I mean, Reds has been going on for, we're going on 14 years in business now.
Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you. Yeah,
That's not a small thing, right?
No,
Let's be honest.
Dude, it's been a struggle. It's been a roller coaster. Let's say that, because there's just as many ups as there are downs.
Do you like coming to work?
It's my second home. Like I feel weird when I'm not here, or if I have to leave for a trip. Like I went to MTE and I left before I normally leave, and I'm like looking around, like, is everything okay? Like, is this going to be okay? Like I didn't want to leave. So it's kind of like a safe place, if you will.
Yeah.
But yeah, I wanted, and I bit off more than I could chew, you know, like I'm like highly optimistic, and I'm a dreamer by nature. So yeah, I want some, you know, how about we do some sandpaper? It's like, dude, you know,
It's like, how can you reinvent sandpaper?
Exactly. After it was like when he was like, I mean, okay. And then I kind of, I think it resonated in my brain, like at what actually came out of my mouth. And I was like, you know, like, oh, I just got myself into something. Because, like, how do you reinvent sandpaper? Or, better question, how do you put a product out on the market that is anywhere near the two global juggernauts, which is Trizac 3M Trizac and Kovacs? They dominate the market. America is in there too, but they're more of like a, you know, it's not just automotive. They have automotive stuff, but it's also like woodworking and metal and you name it, right? But like Trizac 3000 and Kovacs that's the industry standard. Those are the two companies that are just, you know, for lack of better words, kicking ass and taking names. So
yeah.
And like I have a very, very, very long working relationship with like abrasive manufacturers and a multitude of facets. So paper and discs were already something that like I had released with KXK Dynamics, but I wanted something new, and I was like, okay, well, like give me some time with this, and let me kind of work through how I would even approach this or like walk around this project. So I started thinking about it, and it was like, okay, well, what are the absolute benefits of 3M Trizac? What was the legacy that brought to 3M, right? And that was its consistency. It was like right after Unigrit was released, and Unigrit was very inconsistent in sanding signatures. But then all of a sudden you have this interfaced Trizac triple packed silicon carbide disc that came out, and the uniformity in the texture or the sanding signature was just so amazing, and still is to this day, right? They nailed that project. It works phenomenally well.
It's also really expensive.
Yes.
And I feel like it works until it doesn't.
It clogs, yeah. Basically the abrasives that start tumbling out, and then it clogs. So it works amazing wet. But if you try to hook it up dry, nowhere near the same performance level. Okay, we'll push that one over there. Kovacs, incredible, incredible product. You know, you're never really going to hear me talking bad. Immediately out the gate, starts cutting. We call it in my area of the industry, we call it biting. It bites. So it immediately starts leveling the surface, but it dies quickly. And it works phenomenally well dry. But if you put water with it, it's garbage. Also pretty expensive. So what do you do? And it took me a very, very, very long time, but I went with an extremely fine, almost like nanoscale level silicon carbide. I had to basically build an interface that gave you enough play, but didn't like recoil to where you would bounce on the surface, and it would still distribute your abrasive set consistently and evenly. Because what we all seek, like shiny cars, is a spectrum, and it's a spectrum predicated on your capability of visual optics, right? So like a consistent, clean, well-leveled surface will have a more reflective quality to it than something like, let's say, with like orange peel or waves in it, right? You can make it shiny to an extent, but with like a true reflective quality that's like at the highest level, it needs to be leveled in some way, shape, or form. And that's why they wet sand cars after they paint them. That's why they wet sand cars for show cars, because once it's like perfectly flat, it becomes legitimately a mirror. There's no distortion, right? And that applies all the way across the board, whether we're, polishing, sanding, you name it. So distribution of abrasive set across the plane while it's in use. How do you improve the anti-clogging, right? How do you improve the life expectancy? And then the better question is, how do you get it to go from dry to wet or wet to dry and still be well balanced and almost equal in performance on either way? And that's essentially how I approach that project. And that's essentially what separates CarPro SIC discs from the other two global juggernauts.
So are they used dry and wet? Is that what you're saying?
Yes,
or how do you use these?
Yeah, you can use them dry or wet. Yeah.
And how do you clean them when they clog up?
You just wipe it off on a towel and keep it moving.
And just keep it moving.
Yeah, if it's wet, it'll run down the panel. It'll turn into like a slurry. But if it's dry, you just wipe it on a towel and keep going.
And
so when we were at MTE, we had a bunch of people that were like in the refinishing line, like spot painters or body shop owners, even PDR guys. And they were coming up and they were like, it was one or two, their first question. The second they look at, how's it compare to Trizec? Or how's it compare to Kovacs? And I'm like, well, here we go. That's why I'm here, And I would show them either, if they said Kovacs, I would show it to them dry first, and then we'd do it wet, and they would just sit there like, this isn't real life, Or if they said, Trizac, I would try it wet and then show them dry right after that. And they were, this isn't real life. And then, they saw the price on it. And that's where CarPro really, they nailed it. Like they're truly trying to help the industry grow.
Corey seems like a good dude. He's the head of CarPro. Is he the best?
Yeah, Corey's the best human being ever.
That's awesome.
One of them, for sure. He, he's the director of North America for CarPro. Sky's the Limit Car Carriers, his company's name. They're like one-stop shop for everything detail.
So you've developed these silicon carbide discs. You're stoked about them.
Oh, yeah.
But for folks who don't know, these KXK Dynamics sanding blocks, I know I've talked to Jason Kilmer about this before, but they kind of bridge the gap between body shop and detailing, right? And I wonder...
That was my intent.
Can you tell me about that? We have a lot of enthusiasts on this channel, right? And it's like, I'm sure you could talk about anything for all day. You're such a captivating human, honestly.
Thank you.
But it's like, I'm just thinking of the person out there who's maybe kind of getting into detailing. They're an enthusiast. They may not know all about KXK. So maybe it's like a bit of a history lesson for them.
KXK Dynamics was a company that was built by Jason Kilmer, another gentleman named Andy Ward, whose company was called Proficient X at the time. And he was like the paint correction master of Ferrari. So he held the two largest Ferrari dealership accounts in the United States of America. It was World of Ferrari or something like that in New York, and then Ferrari Miami. So he would fly back and forth between these two dealerships twice a month kind of thing. And he was essentially like a rolling paint correction gypsy. I mean, this dude had every polisher you could think of, all of his liquids, everything, all in like bags, all these Rupus bags and stuff. And he would just beep, up, beep, up, beep, up, beep. I mean, like back in the day when the La Ferrari first came out, it was like you were the god of detailing if you could take a picture of a car that like a La Ferrari that you had just done. Andy Ward had already done 14 of them. That's how many, like, yeah, Scooty era, super fast. I mean, just the stuff that like you only see in like magazines or, you know, on YouTube. He was working on these vehicles. He was more than likely the guy that polished them. Anyway, and then myself, Eron Knox, right? So we all kind of like got together and we were like, man, I think it was Andy. He was like, we should just start a business. And I'm like, man, we start a business doing what, you know? And he was like, solving problems for the detail industry. And I'm like, all right. And he was like, what would be the first thing that you attack? Or the first thing that you do? And I was just kind of being a wise ass because at the time I was wrapping a cord of a machine that was sitting on the floor. And I was going to pick it up and I put it in a cabinet. And then my little ones were in a drawer in a toolbox, right? And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna make I would make a damn rack that I could hang these up on, so that I don't have to keep rolling the cords up and throwing them and stuffing them into, you know, drawers and cabinets. And like he just looked at me and he was like, dude, that doesn't exist, you know? And I was like, all right, well, poof, lo and behold is the PR1 multi-polisher rack holder, and it held 5 or 6 polishers.
They're so visually stunning too. They probably
Plus bottles. Yeah, man, that was my very first invention, and it was weird because for like the first 18 months that it was released, like nobody could care that it was in existence. And then we were at SEMA one year, and it was just like, boom, it exploded. And now all these other brands have it. So then I got all huffle-puffed about that. I wasn't pleased, you know, because we didn't have the money to like put up, you know, United States patent or anything on it. I mean, this just costs a ridiculous amount of money. So everybody started kind of like mimicking the design. And I was like, you know, F it. I'm going to make a mini rack, and I'm going to design it to where it will compensate for oscillation and rotation like the spring on a suspension. And I can mount it to my work cart, I can mount it to the wall, I can do whatever, and it'll be a smaller one. And lo and behold is the PR2. I drew it out on a napkin while we were eating chips at a Mexican restaurant. And Andy went ahead and folded it up, put it in his wallet, took it over to Metal Fab, and the next thing you know, here's the PR2. So things started like building up, you know, like we're creating these things for the industry, and like at that time, like no one had ever seen anything like this, and it was very, very, very innovative, and I was like in a really, really good place mentally because I got to create, and I love to create. Like that's just my thing.
I feel the same way. Like when I'm creating, I'm happy.
Yeah, I mean that's why I paint, I draw, I create videos, and then like the R&D for all of these brands is something that I really truly greatly enjoy. And I mean half of them I can't even legally talk about, so I just do it because I like it, you know what I mean? Anyway, we start picking up momentum, and I'll never forget this. I mean, we had like, I want to say we had built up our following on Instagram. It was like 1,800 followers, and I was like, oh man, like, yeah, people are digging it, yada yada yada. And within 18 months, we had 22,000 followers. So like our growth within like a little over a year was like well over 1,000%. It was insane.
You guys were the cool kids. I mean, I'm not saying you're not, but like KXK was the cool kids. Like it was.
Yeah. So
it was a vibe.
Well, yeah, there's a vibe to it, I guess. But, more importantly, I think it was like about the community and solving problems and education, right? So I'm sitting in base 6 one day, and Wody and Kilmer are in Florida at MTE, I think it was. And they're, cruising around, and they always like try to get me to go out, like, and do events and stuff. But like I said, this is my world right here. You know what I mean? So like, this is where I like to stay. I'm not big on plane rides and all that other trash. And I was talking to him. I'm like, yeah, how's the show? Blah, blah, blah. I'm like, hey, well, I got you guys both on the phone. I had an idea. And, Andy's like, oh, what do you got? What do you got? And Kilmer's like, what you got, Knoxy? And I was like, so I've got this little Jason Kilmer custom made little block. It was like this big. And I was like, I keep it in the breast pocket of my, at the time, Dickies shirt. I used to wear like Dickies work shirts. And I was like, in every one of my paint corrections, I just pull that out and I grab a little paper and I do like spot corrections on rids. And
random isolated deep scratches for the uninitiated. Am I right?
Randomly isolated deeper scratches. That's
there you
correct.
Go, deeper. Yeah. Okay.
And I mean, tomato. But
tomato.
I was like, we need to make a 2-inch block that is just this tiny little thing. We can do different densities, and we need to put it in a pack, and we need to call it the Rid Sticks. And like, they just started laughing. They were like, dude, what? And I was like, I'm telling you, I was like, this is something that like, because at the time you have to understand, so like rewind back into like our industry, you had body shops and you had detailers, and they hated each other and they talked trash about each other. And, it wasn't this like mutual community, if you will, Detailers didn't know anything about sanding. There was absolutely no sanding going on. There were a whole bunch of people online like, oh, if you sand a car, it's only as thick as a cellophane and you're going to destroy the paint and all this other rubbish. And so the detailers were scared, and then the body shop guys are like, you guys can't sand, you're not good.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I was like, I genuinely think that we just created a product that will bridge that gap. It's so small that in this industry, the detail industry, how do you get people to try this when they know that there's a higher level of potential compromise in the finish and being predicated by their peers or their predecessors, the guys above them, right? Who, in their defense, they're just making content, but sometimes you got to think when you're talking like that. You know what I mean? So it scared the shit out of the industry. Where you put this tiny little 2-inch block in their hand and you give them a little 3000 grit and they rub it over the scratch and they're like, oh no. And then they polish it and all of a sudden they've got magic. And it started boosting the confidence. And then all of a sudden, and like within, I don't know, once those things hit the market, I think it was like 6 months, you had detailers literally all over the world doing sanding videos on like little spots all over the car, and their quality was going up. And it was like people were taking pride in the work that they were doing. Body shops loved them because they can get into tight little areas. They could nib out, dust and dirt out of the paint, fish eyes, you name it. And they're like, man, I mean, in the body shop industry, like if you brought a pack of Rid Sticks into that body shop, do not plan on taking that back out with you, because that's gone. Like it was like crack rock to them. Like they were like, you got any more of those things? So that was the birth of the Rid Sticks. That's how it all went down. And KXK is an acronym that stands for Kilmer, Profession X, and Knoxy.
I wanted to ask, is it still a 3-person operation? Does the KXK around? I'm looking online. They're still available on people's websites.
Yeah.
What's the status of KXK?
Right now, KXK is just chilling. I haven't really had a lot of time to dedicate to that particular brand, and it just kind of hit cruise control for now. I've got a large focus on like the stuff that I'm doing currently,
Yeah.
And the technology that's coming out in the very near future with some of the stuff that we use regularly it's just incredible to watch it grow and evolve, I know that there's a lot of people in the industry that like their worlds kind of surround ceramic coatings or, paint protection film or any of these things. And like, seemingly for the last couple of years, it's all kind of like the same regurgitated stuff, right? And in any industry, it does one of two things once it gets to that plateau. A new technology comes out and it catapults it another 5 stages up in the air, or they have a renaissance period where it does a reset. And in the way that would work in our industry, the reset would be you're no longer validated as far as like your clients concerned, right? Because nobody's really detailing for other detailers. And if you are, you need to change that now. Your skill set is what will validate you, not your access to a product or access to a brand, or if you use this particular brand. It will no longer matter. It'll more so matter about how well can you do this interior detail? How well can you do this wash and wax? How well can you do a paint correction? How well can you can you fix this texture on these cars? That kind of stuff. That would be a reset for us. The acceleration in that regard would be taking structures that we have currently and turning them into hybrid versions. So that's about as far as I can go.
I'm like, well, okay, can you just kind of tell me
No,
more?
I mean, naturally, like that's what your mind's going to do. Be like, how would you
What does that look? What does that look like in Knoxy's brain?
You're right,
I'm like trying to picture your brain, and it must be like this.
It's a circus.
Wild and terrifying place.
Yeah, it's midgets, fire trucks. There's all sorts of stuff going on in there.
Fire hoses hosing down the.
You've got a. I'm trying to speak very carefully if you haven't picked up on that. You have watched through the years companies, whether it was primarily or solely marketing based or true fact about the product's performance, attack or promote, this is a better word, certain things. You know, in the beginning of it, it was, oh, my coating will last 3 years. Well, mine will last 5. Well, mine will last 7. Well, mine will last 9. Mine lasts a lifetime. You know, it was like the length of how long the coating were. And if you really sit down and use your noodle, like truly put the tinfoil hat on, the longer the coating lasts, the less money you make unless you're doing maintenance washes. And the funny thing about that is that the majority of dudes or females that are doing an abundance of ceramic coatings and polish jobs don't have time to do the maintenance stuff.
That's not where the money is?
No. Like, think about it, bro.
But it's so interesting because there's lots of people out there who are like, you make all this money on your maintenance clients. You can make $100,000 a year on maintenance. And like, I just see so much noise on Instagram from people who have been detailing for about a year, right? Who are teaching you how to detail. And I'm like, are they full of it?
That's true, though. The maintenance part of it is true because that's a recirculate. You got to think like a business person on this. This isn't like detailers don't think like business guys a lot of the time. That's like when we train, we try to get them to think a certain way. It's like, you're going to need a car wash way more than you're going to need a ceramic coating. And now that you have a ceramic coating, you're going to need your car washed a specific way. If you scratch up the surface or swirl up the surface or all of that stuff, the ceramic coating looks like poop, right? So you have to be more diligent with that. Well, if you're more diligent with that, it's certainly going to take more time. And if it takes more time, then you should be charging more money, which means that your car wash should be around 100 to, I don't know, depending on where you live, 100 to 150 bucks, right? We charge $225 here for a car wash. And we offer a lot more than just a car wash, but I walk through that process with clients and get them to understand the value of that. This is where it falls back on the ceramic coating thing. I mean, you detail, right? Just give me a number. This isn't like anything crazy. There's no trick question here. What's the highest or the most year ceramic coating that you would offer to your clients? How many years does it?
Well, as a company man, DIY detail, I've got an 8-year ceramic coating that I would offer. I haven't run a detail shop in so long that I haven't thought through how I would approach what coating I would offer them and which one is my favorite and which one, I think would bring them back more. But yeah.
So you've got many different ways to cut this cookie, right? And there's there's a million different people. And this by no means is to like throw shade on your product or whatever, but
if I can take it, I mean, we're
man, it's any. I don't roll like that. Unless I have a reason to. I don't have a reason to. So any coating, right? let's just say I asked you for an example. You gave me an example. You're like, I got an 8-year one. Okay, not a problem. Awesome. To the detailers watching this or going to hear this or whatever, how much money are you going to charge this person for 8 years of protection on their vehicle? And the potential that you're not going to see them for 8 years. How much money are you going to charge them? Well, here we go into the typical detail stuff that you see. I get $3,500 for my corrections and my ceramics. Cool. You put 40 hours into it and you're not going to see them for 8 years. That's not enough money. You made 35 cents an hour if I'm breaking it all down, right? Congratulations. So okay, well then what do? Right? Hit him at a year, hit him at 2 years, hit him at 3 years, and quantify your time and the distance between those two. So long story short, that's just kind of like my philosophy on that. I have no idea what we were originally talking about.
My brain's feeling a little muddy on that. I don't know how we got there. I do like the business advice stuff because I think there's a lot of details out there. I am also just kind of fascinated on your thoughts on paint correction, because in a world where I feel like clear coats are getting more thin, you're a man after my heart with the expert lighting, and you're like, I want all the shop lights off, and I want this to have no micro marring, like no DA haze left. Like that's the kind of corrections and coating, the paint corrections I used to do. They were very stressful. I obviously didn't have your skill set either, so it was like I didn't really know what I was interacting with, I had your KXK sticks and I was able to get good results and I felt pride, and I'm really grateful that I, was able to launch a career thanks to some of your techniques. Didn't even realize all the stuff that I'm grateful for from you, so that's pretty cool.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, I guess I'm just kind of curious, like, what I want to talk about paint with you.
Yeah,
I really do.
Get on a rabbit hole, Nick.
Is that too much of a rabbit hole?
No, absolutely not. I mean, I think that there's going to be a number of people that really want to hear this, so that's fantastic.
Well, let's think of them on the other side of the screen, whoever that avatar is for you, because you actually train guys. What do you want them to know about paint and paint correction?
It's not that. It's the guys that I haven't trained yet. And this is the thing, is that for years and years and years and years and years, we have heard the same thing from a multitude of people. A multitude of people. And when I say years and years and years, I've been hearing this for over a decade. All right? Understanding paint. The top layer of paint nowadays is still significantly more resilient than any paint system in the history of painting cars to this day. Now, inconsistencies, yeah, that's because brands are cutting corners on materials. That's the reason why you're getting composites as opposed to true carbon fiber. That's not going to change. What should change is your skill set. And to base a generalized speaking and absolute statement about paint correction and try to make it to where we're capping ourselves is essentially more detrimental in the way that you think than it is to challenge yourself to become a better technician. And what I mean by that is if I only ran single stage polishes and I capped myself at that because I was so scared to fail, I have to ask everybody watching this, are you ever really going to learn? Are you ever really going to succeed? If I stand in a kiddie pool and I walk around in water all day, am I ever really going to learn how to swim? And that's something that is imperative in the regards of when someone comes to you and they need, a heavier cut. They need this. This is what they're asking for. You have to understand that those are the people keeping your lights on. Now, you could certainly talk them out of it, just the same way that you could talk them into something. But if somebody's coming to you for a service and you are, in fact, a service provider, there's certain stuff that you're not going to be able to do. That's okay. Before we started doing PPF, hey, you guys do film? No, sorry. You don't want to lose that revenue, right? So why would you not challenge yourself and why would you not learn? The time and time again, I've heard the clear coat's only as thick as cellophane. Sure, okay. It's, it's only as thick as cellophane. But let's just go ahead and use our thinking caps real quick. I have the thickness of cellophane in wood, I have it in plastic, and I have it in metal. All of them are the same thickness. And I'm polishing all of those. Which one am I going to blow through first? Plastic. Okay. Why? Because it's a different form of resiliency. That's the one thing that you never hear in the back end, is the resilience of clear coat. So when you're sanding, when you're compounding, when you're polishing, instead of just sitting there on it, like you see these guys in these videos just doing these, we call it granny polishing. You just, that's the reason why it's taking you 80 hours, bro. Keep it moving, you know what I mean? Like quicker hand speeds. What we don't understand about the machines and what we don't understand about the paint, like if you're dealing with base coat, clear coat, which is modern day paint, and even, acrylics and enamels and stuff like that. But let's just stay in this place with base coat, clear coat. Clear coat is non-pigmented paint, essentially. It's porous. It responds to heat and cold. It responds to UVA, UVB. It is quite literally the closest thing that you can give an example to your skin. It gets irritated. It gets agitated. It swells when it gets too hot. Like, does that sound familiar? Okay, so if we know how to do these types of things, if we know how to move our hands, or the compression ratio that we need to put down on the machine, or which pad or which liquid, and we become a true craftsman, we now have opened up a total different spectrum of demographic people that we can cater to. So like I heard a comment one time online, and it might have been on your podcast, I don't know, but I forget a lot.
It's possible. When you have enough content out there, it's like, it's hard to remember.
There's no reason for compound in today's market or something like that. I don't know where I saw that, but that is not true. And I'm just going to give one example as to why.
I love a good compound, by the way. I mean, remember, the name of our company, although a lot of detailers love and trust us, is DIY. So we market to a very enthusiast crowd, right? Someone who just picked up the polisher for the first time.
One of my students is a neurosurgeon that helped establish Emory University Medical Center. It's one of the most prestigious medical centers on the East. He's a DIY guy, but he is literally a sponge, and he's all about compounding cars now. So I get it,
Yeah, no, but I think there's definitely
I probably watch this too, by the way.
Well, and like teaching people over the internet versus in person, right? I think you could see a compound from us in the future, but I'm not sitting here like feeling like I'm on trial. I also understand what you're saying. Like, I love a heavy cut compound. I also love cutting with the rotaries.
You need help making a compound, you just let me know. Anyway, the one example I'm going to give as to why you would still need a compound. Yes, in today's times, paint might be getting thinner in certain manufacturers. I can guarantee you the same way that paint changes with manufacturers, that will change too. It always has. 2014, Porsche made a running change and said nothing to no one, and it went from workable clear coat, not too bad, to what am I polishing? This is concrete. GM Black. I remember when they made that running change, it pretty much crippled half the detail industry because nobody could figure out how to finish it down. And they still struggle with it to this day. I hate GM Black. It's like, you have to adapt, you have to learn, and that quite literally is the significance and meaning of what we're doing, right? But the prime example of why you would need a compound in modern times, I mean, I can't tell you. I've had $386,000 Ferraris get dropped off from Italy, and either the transport company, or it just came this way from Italy, needed to go to a body shop. Are they using the same paint as Ferrari?
No.
Somebody that just bought a brand new Porsche, which is high solid clear coat, very challenging to polish. It takes a lot of abuse, right? They got in a little fender bender pulling out of the dealership, took it to a body shop. Is that the same paint? So like, we could polish all of this stuff and make it really shiny, but this one needs a different form of correction. People that drive vehicles for, 7 to 10 years. and they're not good with maintenance. You going to hit that with a polish? Sure. But what if they want it to look new again and they have enough material on it? It's up to you to understand that, and it's up to you to be able to give them that quality. And once you do, you establish trust and faith. They tell every single person that'll listen about you. And it's all because you believed in yourself and you started compounding. Compound is life.
Hey, man, if they want it, I mean, so is it as simple as like a paint thickness gauge for you, knowing the material? Because
It depends.
been in this industry long enough, it's like, go to get trained, spend time with cars. Like, you just, experience is experience. We can talk about it all day long, and that's why people consume it, but you also got to just touch cars, right?
Yeah, this is a thing, dude, is that, YouTube is amazing, and I'm on YouTube, so and nobody come at me sideways.
Yeah, exactly,
right?
yeah.
YouTube is only going to give you so much. You have to understand that camera gets turned off and then gets turned back on again, okay? What people say online, and even some of, like I said, some of our predecessors, man, some of these guys have 3 decades, 4 decades in this industry. And if everything from the manufacturer's OEM is always changing, then that means that no one knows everything, and they never will. You're always going to have to learn. You're always going to have to get acclimated with something new, because that manufacturer just changed this, that, or third. I.e., the example about Porsche in 14, i.e., the example about GM. GMs used to be so easy to polish, and then it became an absolute nightmare, But as far as training goes, let me pause this little punk rock music I got going on here.
What do you got? Some punk rock?
Always, dude. Oh, who is this? I don't know. We just put it on and it like recommends stuff. Trainings. Oh, that's a really, really, really good topic. I am irrefutably and I mean just adamant about education. Everybody that comes to a training with me, the very next year, the average is 33% in growth. The very next year. And I love it. I love seeing that aha moment when what I'm saying clicks in their brain. I love seeing them do what I just showed them. And I love seeing them go home and be able to feed their family more, or have more opportunity to just be with their family because they've become more efficient, or they understand what they're working on and they're not scared to do it. They knock it out. They're not, just keeping themselves contained in this little box. They're thirsty. It like awakens them. Next thing you know, a year later, they're doing film, or they're doing, this. Some of them start painting cars. I mean, it's amazing. It's amazing. And that little spark is what it's everything for me, right? With the one-on-one or the personal training stuff has always been very important to me, because it gives people the opportunity to grow. And with saying that, all of a sudden training became like this like fly-by-night cash grab thing.
I noticed that, where it was like everybody was offering trainings.
A professional trainer, and I'm like, and I keep it simple, because there's a lot of people that like I'm acquaintances with that have been like, man, I really want to start educating people. Like, I love the idea and the concept of it, and I want to do it. And I'm like, okay, let me ask you some questions. And we'll start going through, and I'll just ask questions that I get asked in trainings. And if you don't have one of those answers, you ain't a trainer yet.
What if you can get paid, though? Then maybe you still are a trainer.
But see, that's the thing. You can get paid selling crack cocaine.
I'm the devil's advocate. Is like, people are still paying people for training.
Oh, 100%. Well, and that's the thing where
that you've trained.
Yeah, you're. It's not that you're doing anything wrong. You believe in yourself, and this is something you want to do, right? But like, if you're just doing it to sell product, if you're just doing it to be seen, let's get real, dude. The stuff that we do is not rocket science. It's not like, yes, you have to be skilled. Yes, you have to have, a very good understanding. But like, anybody can take a foam pad and a polish to a car.
That's a beautiful thing, by the way.
Yeah,
from where I sit.
mean, listen,
it empowers people to like do superhero shit on their cars. All of a sudden, my car is shiny.
Right.
It ain't perfect, but it's shiny.
Yeah, I mean, you have a lot of people that are trying to, learn more. Like I said, I mean, I'm training a neurosurgeon right now. I mean, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? But like, if your intentions, and like the person doing it would know that, but if your intentions are just to get money or to sell a product in the back end, are you really there for that person's education? And hey, look, it's just my opinion for what it's worth, but not for nothing. That's some slimy shit or stuff. Excuse me. I don't mean to cuss on your.
No, it's good. And I think your heart should be in the right place, and the buyer should always beware. Like discern.
100%. Do your due diligence.
I'm even telling my kids, I'm like, let the buyer beware. Like you have to do your due diligence. You have to suss out
everything else. Like, I mean, you want to go buy shoes, you want to go buy a car, you want to go buy a house. I mean, you got to look into it, right? Well, like these training events and stuff that you see just pop up out of nowhere, and it's like $700, and we're gonna go over paint correction, and then like you go and you look at the pictures, and it's a foam pad, and that's the extent of what they did. You're not even teaching somebody paint correction. I mean, on a technicality, you are. Like, I altered this. It has a couple less scratches, and it's shinier. That is considered a paint correction. Like, I'm sorry, around these parts, that ain't paint correction.
Well, that's polishing. I think paint correction does involve compounding, maybe what's in it. So I do want to ask you, what do you say about, because you're releasing these sanding discs with CarPro, like, do you wet sand OEM clear these days?
100%. 100% I do, if I'm getting paid to do it. I'm not going to put myself into a potential opportunity to, make a mistake or leave a blemish on a vehicle. But, and I've had a ton of them. I mean, dude, I'm literally, okay, so this is probably $120,000 after the build. That is a 90s model Targa with crimson interior, and it's only got 40,000 miles on it. That particular gentleman makes $5 million a month. His neighbor is Arthur Blank. His neighbor in Florida is Tiger Woods. This man could have me murdered 5 ways till sundown and not skip a beat. He wouldn't even miss lunch, I don't think. If that gentleman requests that I slay everything in that finish that I physically can without harming the finish itself, I will do that. I will do that. And to answer your question, a lot of the stuff, and this is just Ferris, but I've got one of those little like Positechs, I think it is. Next. This little guy.
Okay.
Super affordable, $200, two and change. Bluetooth. So you turn it on, download the app, stick it on a ferrous material, metal. It has a metal substrate, and it'll give you a reading. It tells you if there's a putty layer in there, it tells you if it's steel, if it's aluminum. So that way you know how to conduct heat when you're polishing, what you're working on. Non-ferrous would be a composite car. Composite cars are a little bit more tricky. So when you're talking about polishing, the substrate conducts heat under the paint differently. It centralizes it as opposed to sheet metal, and it distributes it, which means you're going to get hot real quick, which means all the granny polishers that just sit there on paint like that, you're going to have a problem.
So hopefully you can send me a link to that and I can put it in the description. So if folks are curious about finding, this is your paint thickness gauge that you really like.
Yeah, it's like I mean, I keep it right here on this little counter because it's like, oh, let me go grab this real quick. It's like, look, paint gauge readers are not the end all be all. And like, oh my God, it'll save my life kind of thing. But it'll definitely keep you from stepping in some stuff that you're not going to get off your shoe. And whether it's putty, if it tells you it has a putty layer, then that means that you need to proceed with caution. If it tells you you have a thin amount of micromicrons on the surface, you need to proceed with caution. You know what I mean? If it tells you got 400 microns, you need to proceed with caution. The end of all of those is you need to proceed with caution.
What do you mean by putty under the like?
So a lot of the times, like, I mean, you might see it on composite cars. I'm pretty sure there's one in this door because it got repainted. But Bondo, in my world, we call that mud. In a professional setting, in my world, they call it putty, a putty layer. But it's essentially Bondo. And let's say, like, here's a better example. You know, on my car, that's big boy American steel, right?
Yeah.
You've got divots and low spots in this metal, but it's so thick, or if you can't get it perfectly straight, they'll grab some Bondo and they'll sand down the surface. They'll put some Bondo over it so that it makes it straight, and then they'll sand everything together and then they'll paint it. Well, that Bondo in that area is called putty, and it conducts heat different than that.
Wow. So
if
knowing
you're sitting there slowly trying to just make something shiny and you don't have quick hand speed, you can cave that putty in.
That's so fascinating. So I was going to talk about the KXK days. I feel like the high watermark of that era was when you guys got on Obsessed Garage. And it was you, Kilmer, and...
It was Kilmer and Andy. Yeah.
Oh, you weren't there, Knoxy.
Nah.
Well, I watched every video.
I told you, bro, I don't leave this.
Yeah. Nor do you get on podcasts very often, so I'm stoked to have you. Yeah. But that was like the high watermark, I felt like, of like when y'all were just like popping off, and you taught Matt Mormon, how to read, paint, how to sand it, how to cut. But I remember the hammer down method. Can you talk about how you like to like when you're out there trying to compound paint, like what is the Knoxy method?
So, being able to like vocalize that won't make sense. Coming to a training will make sense. And even literally, this is not a ploy for you to come to my training. I'm booked out for a year. But the reason I'm saying that is even in person in a training, when I explain it to you and I show you, it will take another month of you trying to practice it to truly understand. And what I do is a mixture of why rotaries are amazing, and I alleviate the damage that Ds do. And I love a DA machine, okay? And I equally, if not maybe a little bit more, love a rotary. But you have to understand what these are doing. And just like the last couple of years, I think has been more of like, because YouTube's growing and like you've got a lot of people doing detail channels and stuff like that, they're talking about these. DA, it stands for dual action. It oscillates and rotates. The millimeter is the distance between the points of oscillation. You've heard all of this. I'm sure a bunch of people listening have heard all of this. How does that translate when you have it compressed to the surface? Does it really, truly rotate and oscillate? Well, you'll hear a bunch of people saying if it's not spinning, you're not cutting, and that's not necessarily true. Jitterbugs, it's a sanding machine, and all it does is go up and down really quick, put a piece of sandpaper on it, and it'll sand a surface, and it actually does it really, really well. Very consistent sanding signatures. So if you have a machine that is oscillating and rotating in a millimeter of distance, does it look familiar? Kind of like the sander before it, like a jitterbug. And you can actually cut paint doing that. And we've tested that 100 times, if any.
Without the backing plate spinning, right?
Without the
backing. It's still cutting very well without.
I wouldn't say very well, but it's still cutting.
It's still cutting. Okay.
Yeah, and what that's doing to the surface. Now, since we've been on this podcast, I told you about paint. What's the closest thing that you can relate to paint?
Skin.
Or vice versa? Your skin. Okay. All right, Nick. So you hold out your arm. Are you a hairy dude?
I got some arm hair in my later years.
You're still working on it. It's okay. All right. I don't want to unleash this thing. You don't want to see it.
What do we got in there? Some bear arms.
Some straight up orange. Yeah. Well, not this one. That's what my tattoos are. The other one, it's fine.
We know hair is on arms.
I'm built in with a sweater. Okay. Take a mild abrasive and hold your arm out.
Okay.
And have somebody just sit there with it As long as you watch some of these dudes doing passes on panels.
Yeah.
Overworking the shit out of this. I'm sorry for cussing.
No, it's okay.
Overworking the mess out of this compound or this polish or whatever they're using, right? To the point where they're like, it's locking up on a panel. Imagine someone rubbing on your arm that fast, that long. How do you think your skin's going to feel?
It's probably going to get really red and angry and maybe even start to bleed.
And swell. Correct.
Okay.
And that's what paint's doing. Now we're going to take our super sweet, God knows what's in this panel prep, and we're going to spray 110%. Well, I mean, I want to say isopropyl alcohol just to relate to like your skin, but you're cleaning that out. You're cleaning out that wound. Is that going to feel good?
No.
Is your skin going to respond well to that?
No.
But hold on, there's more. Now we're going to smother it with an inorganic nanostructure, aka a ceramic coating. So how do we get through this? How do we get past this? We understand the machine, and understanding the machine with the very, very important thing of the millimeter in dual action is doing this, which essentially is creating a tearing motion on the skin. So when you have quicker hand speed, you're capitalizing on the oscillation, the rotation, and the vibration or the tearing motion of it. And you're capable of bouncing in between and keeping the surface cool, which keeps the pores closed, which means that those defects that you're seeing in this lighting don't come back. You keep the surface cool. So the bigger the throw, the more likely you are to create a tearing motion in paint. And it's actually very detrimental. It can collapse paint systems. It can cause premature deterioration. Not only that, but you're milling it down on a microscopic level. So when people talk about rotaries and them being so dangerous, those are usually the people that you see slow poking their way in life through with a rotary.
You know, when you
put a rotary on a tilt,
okay,
instead of putting it flat, even if it has just a slight tilt like that, you got to think it's spinning in one direction, right? So what's that pad doing? It's grabbing air and it's pushing it under the surface and keeping that surface cool. But it's also a very consistent pattern. It's not in multiple different areas. That's where DAs create haze, rotaries create swirls. It's a very consistent, clean motion, which means you're actually leveling the surface more efficiently. I'll put it to you this way. I couldn't tell you how many, I've trained hundreds and hundreds of detailers. And whenever I propose this one, they're like, oh, and it's like, you've done this just masterpiece of a paint correction. And you spent 80 hours on it and you just can't wait to get online and boast about that. You coated it, you pulled it outside, and the scratches came back. I need better lighting. I need better compound. I need better machines. No, man. You need detailing Jesus. And you need to understand that you swole that paint up so much that those little fine scratches that you were chasing with a microscope were no longer visible until the paint cooled down. You never really got them out. It was all technique. Cheers.
I'd like to think that never happened to me, but I think it happened at least once. And I was like, why are all these...
Every single human being participating, including myself, has gone.
I was like, it came back like a week later after I coated it. I was like, or a couple weeks later, I was like, what? Dude, I swear there weren't all these scratches on the rear. I'm like, this must have been like the snow or something, snow coming down.
Watched it wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that was
it was me. I probably overheated it. Yeah.
Yeah, it was us.
So keeping the paint cool is a critical step, obviously.
It is. And then again, anybody watching and listening, it's about education. It's not about, I'm not selling you anything. I'm just educating, right? Most people do not all right, here's a working example. You got a wool pad, you got a microfiber pad, and you got a foam pad. Nick, which one of them's generating more heat?
Microfiber.
Nope.
False.
False.
False. Foam? I'm looking for the most surprise. Wool? Yeah, foam.
Foam. Foam conducts the most heat. Foams, for the majority of the foams, I'm going to say majority just to stay safe, but the majority of foams in our industry are made with a variant of plastic. Do you know what paint is?
Plastic.
Plastic. So that's super friction. And when you're sitting there, especially with air pockets in it, you're creating an immense amount of heat, especially considering most microfiber pads aren't that thick. So when you only foam polish, no matter how good your polish is, you're actually inducing more heat with a tearing motion of a DA than you are with a wool pad, which is the coolest out of the two, and a rotary. Let that sink in for a second.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Is like, you got so much knowledge and so many years of experience. Like, can you just give me like some in my veins to like put in there? Like, what do you like to cut with? What are your go-to compounds?
Whatever gets the job done quicker. I mean, you have to understand too that as we speak right now, I have 9 working variant compounds to beta test for multiple different brands. That's why I'm saying that some of the new stuff coming out is really cool. Really, really cool. Micro diminishing abrasives are just the start. And that's where most brands are like capped out. Like, we have the creme de la creme. Like, no, the new stuff coming is going to be insane. My favorite, I mean, Meguiar's 101. It's the king of compounds.
Still?
But it does. Yeah, dude, I bought like 7 cases of that stuff because I knew that it was going to be discontinued way before it was announced. It's my favorite liquid on the planet. But it does. Like, dude, you're never going to see a true woodworker or a true metalworker or a true anything craftsman who complains about the dust. You're never going to see it. And like, if there's dust on the car, I don't understand this. This is something that blows my mind. And I talk about this openly in training. Hold on, let me get it unraveled from my cord mess. Like, we all have these things. Why are you not blowing the car off? Why are you not blowing the car off? It's literally that easy. Like, you're worried about dust? Get to the job. Point A to point B. I want money. I want another hot rod. I want a big house by the ocean. And I can't get that by working 100 hours for $1,500. That's why I use compounds. That's why I use whatever's going to get me from point A to point B. Now, you know, as I start to test, there's a lot of stuff. Menzerna FG400 makes an amazing compound. Day-to-day, pound for pound, Oberk makes an amazing product line. I've never in my life, I mean, this is probably the absolute best medium polish on the planet.
I've heard great things about it. I've never tried it.
Dude, you do yourself a favor. That product is, if you're a one-stepper, like that's just what you want to do, you can't miss. You can't miss. It doesn't matter if it's a wool pad, a microfiber pad, a foam pad, rotary, DA, direct driven, it doesn't matter. Vinyl, paint, single stage paint, base coat, clear coat. Like, I've literally ran the tests, the entire gauntlet on that fluid. It performs every time. And in some cases on hard clears, it'll finish.
Really?
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
What's your favorite finish polish?
Ooh, that's a tough one. So Jungle Juice is still one that I really, really love.
What's Jungle Juice?
What, you don't know about Jungle Juice?
I don't know about Jungle Juice.
I don't know about Jungle Juice, Nick.
Are you about to tell me it's like Meguiar's 210 mixed with 101 and like some water?
Meguiar's 210, absolutely not. Too much petroleum distillate, sir. One of my employees called it go-go juice, but it's called Jungle Juice. And essentially the base of it is 205. Then you've got M34 inspection wax, which is half a fluid ounce. And you've got like roughly 1 fluid ounce of Menzerna's 3800.
What?
You shake it up until it turns like this, like light. I'm partially colorblind, so it looks like a light gray to me almost. And then overnight, you let it set and it turns white again. But it has micro diminishing abrasive. It's water soluble, and the alcohol in M34 fuses the two polishes together. M3800 has a semi-perm polymer resin in it, which gives you a pristine, clean finish. And then the 205 diluted wipes off the surface effortlessly.
Does it fill? Like, could you ceramic coat over that? Or
Yeah,
you just
it's got resins in it. It's got the new tech in it. Like that Menzerna stuff, all of that stuff has like some sort of formulation of resin in it. And that's the reason why we get such great finishes, because it fills a little bit. It's got a darkening agent, gives you a better, more lustrous finish. So yeah, but you're thinning it out. So you can still get a phenomenal finish, but it's not that smeary, gooey nightmare. You just, and it wipes right off. So then it works really, really good with high tension clear coats like Hondas and Subarus. Like we call them stick paint, where the stuff sticks. You use an open cell foam, lower your speed, increase your hand speed, and you can actually finish those down and not leave the little lawnmower marks from your polisher.
You are just like, you're moving too fast for me. High tension clear coats, like there's levels to this game.
Dude, there's a world outside of your world, man. And there's a world outside of mine. You know what I mean? And it's cool when you do podcasts like this because, you know, essentially a lot of the stuff that I do isn't what your brand promotes and vice versa. You know what I mean? And that's okay. Yeah. Those two things can exist in the same plane as long as there's respect. And a lot of the guys that are wet sanders, that are rotary guys, there's just as much ego in that area as there is, you know, the guys that are only doing the foam pad polishing. I mean, that's a human trait. But what's cool is that you build a community that believe in you, and they're hungry, they're thirsty, and they want to learn. That's where I come into play. That's where, for a very, very small fee, I will give you some education that you can take home with you forever. And that's the reason why our trainings are not $700.
What are you still running Gloss University? Is that part, or where are you at?
Well, okay. I'm a member of the Gloss University. I don't run it. I could never run something that cool. That outfit is probably, and I say this with all respect, you know, Jason Rose is a very dear friend of mine. I have a bunch of very dear friends that have very well established and very prestigious training centers. Okay. In my opinion, to not speak in absolutes, the Gloss University is hands down one of the best trainings you can go to if you're trying to learn anything really. I mean, they do interior detailing stuff. They do general service stuff. They do advanced wet sanding and paint correction, and that's where I come into play. Like I'll be a part of that stuff. You get to go to the Ring Brothers. If you don't know who the Ring Brothers are, you need to. They're literally SEMA Battle of the Builders winners multiple years in a row. They make one-off machines, street machines that you'll never see anywhere, and the level of detail that goes into that stuff will blow your mind. Well, Gloss University has a training at their facility.
In Wisconsin, right?
Yeah, you literally get to see this stuff. Like the last training we had, Enya was being built. And then that year it went to SEMA and won. A $1.9 million resto pod. Like the thing was custom welded titanium exhaust. Like the inverted rear suspension was literally designed by the guy that created the suspension for the GT40. Like that's how hardcore they're going. Yeah, and you get to have a training there, so you get your education and you get to hang out at the mecca of awesome. Yeah, Gloss University is amazing. I
always tell people, like, because I'm a believer in like being in person with other humans, right? In this world of remote work, connection, man, connection is so important that like just get in the same room with people, and that's where the magic happens. And I know you got to be discerning with which training you go to, and Gloss University is like on my list for sure. Of like, it's just reminding me of how much I want to continue my education, even though I'm the face of a brand, because there's never an end to learning. And,
we have also, I don't mean to cut you off, for the Gloss University, that's the thing that that's the thing that I probably hold the dearest to my heart, is that the Gloss University is not product centric. It's not brand centric. So we'll have sponsors one class and then another class that'll be totally different sponsors. It's just people who want to participate in the overall growth and education of the industry. So there's no like, well, you know, our entire system is predicated on this product and it just so happens that we sell that, you know. Like, it's not. And that's what I love, you know. I mean, and to give you kind of a funny story on that, the very first one we ever did was sponsored by 3M and BASF. So if you know those two companies, one, what? Two, they're not friendly with each other. And they still agreed to play nice because of the Gloss University's mission statement, where no brand dominates. It's all about education. And that I thought was like the coolest feather in the hat moment ever. Ever.
What is the best advice you've ever received?
The best advice I ever received? We have this old man, you know, he's still around, but I don't think his health's too good. And his business card was a casino chip. And we called him Mean Gene. Now, Mean Gene is a huge reason as to why these things are here. Mean Gene does a lot of import-export, right? Mean Gene rolls up in a Bentley one day. Dude's in his 70s. I mean, you know, all this shit. With Serrati. And we did his Bentley for him. We did film on it, coded it, did full-on paint correction for him. He's one of those guys that wants perfect, within reason, you know, within safety. And, you know, Gene, you good? You happy? Oh, yeah, great, good. It's great. So he gets in his Bentley and he's sitting there, and I think he was trying to figure out how to turn the damn thing on. And he rolls his window down and says, Ray, get your ass out of here. So I run out there and I'm like, sir. And he's like, let me tell you something, boy. And I was like, yes, sir. Never, never, never feel bad for charging somebody for what you do. And he rolled his window up and he took off. And I was like, what the hell do you mean by that? You know, I charge people for my time. But then I sat there and I remember, like, it hit me at the end of it. Time. Nick, do you know what the one and only commodity in this world that you can't make more of or ever get back? Do you know what that is?
I think I know.
It's time. It's your time. The hour and 23 minutes and 51 seconds and counting that we've just dedicated to each other is for a better cause. It was an even exchange. But if you're spending 100 hours on someone's car and you're only making $1,000, how many of those hours are you going to get back? How many hours are you dedicating to something that isn't paying you well and not dedicating it, you know, watching your kids grow up, or being with your girlfriend or your wife, or being with your parents, you know? I mean, I lost my mom a while back, and I can tell you now that that's one of the most painful things a human being will ever go through. And you are left with nothing but the desire to have them back. And that's immediately followed with, I wish I would have spent more time with them. So that's what Mean Gene meant when he said, never be scared to charge someone for your time. Well, give me 1 second. I'm going to turn this air compressor off.
Well, as you turn the air compressor off, I want to thank you for your time. As you turn the air compressor off, I just want to thank you for your time. And I do agree that, you know, we can't get it back, but it is for the betterment and the education and the edification of the folks listening. If folks appreciated this, could you do us a couple favors? Because it's free. Subscribe to Red's Detail Co. on YouTube. Subscribe to the House of Rags. It doesn't cost you anything. You just say, I appreciate you. It's a handshake. It's a thank you.
That's right.
Leave a comment below.
A little bell rings so you get notified the next time we drop a new episode.
It's how the game is played, baby. And if you want to hear more from Knoxy, leave that in the comments below as well.
That's right. Listen, Nick, it's been awesome. I really appreciate it. I'm glad that we finally got to do a podcast.
Dude, I appreciate you, brother.
Thank you for entertaining my bullshit. And maybe there's another one in the future. Who knows?
I sure hope so.
Yes, sir.
Knoxy, peace out, brother.
Take it easy, brother. How the hell do you turn this damn thing off?